Welcome to the Money Maven Project podcast. If you're here to learn how to obtain freedom over your time and money through real estate investing, you're in the right place. Create the life you want by living with intention and becoming a maven in mindset, money, and real estate. Now, here's your host, Justin Monk.
Hey, this is Justin with the Money Maven Project podcast. Super excited this evening. We've got Mindy from Investing in Your Wealth with us tonight. Super excited to hear your story and your message. Why don't you introduce yourself and kind of tell us your story?
Yeah, so thanks for having me. Excited to be here. As mentioned, my name's Mindy, and on Instagram, you can find me at Investing in Your Wealth. And a little background on me. I started my Instagram probably about 2 years ago now. And, really probably the same as most folks. It was just to kind of keep myself accountable for, I say I'm going to do something, I actually do it. Mm-hmm. And at the time, I actually had not bought any real estate, didn't have any background except for about a decade of saying, I want to invest in real estate someday.
Yeah.
And then not really doing anything with it. And so when I first started, my account was more geared towards tracking my debt payoff. Mm-hmm. And I also did what's called a no spend year, mm-hmm. where I didn't buy any clothes or shoes or accessories, makeup. I didn't have any hair dye or anything like that for a whole year. I just cut all of that out. And so that's how it initially started, was, that debt payoff, tracking my no spend year. And, once I started getting through that $165,000 of collective consumer debt, student loan debt, all of that, getting that paid off, I was like, okay, so what's next?
Yeah.
And, along my debt payoff journey, I had been, already investing. I had a Roth IRA and my HSA and contributing to employer 401k, getting the match, all of that. So I've always been into investing. But then I was like, what about, most of those accounts, I can't really do anything until I'm 65.
Right.
And so I was like, what about now and until I'm 65? What if I want some extra money? And so I really started reading, probably the typical path where I read Rich Dad, Poor Dad as my first book, and then found Bigger Pockets. And I actually, on Bigger Pockets, I went and I searched out for other folks in the Kansas City market, because that's where I'm located. Mm-hmm. And so I listened to every single investor that had been interviewed on Bigger Pockets that was in my area. And I started just kind of looking them up and networking basically. And, really, I found a whole network of, other investors, and I found a local Meetup group that I immediately jumped in, and I started attending the local meetups. And, really, I just started saying I'm an investor, and hadn't really bought anything yet, but I had the mindset of an investor now. And so from there, within 60 days of starting researching, reading, networking, within 60 days, I started making offers. I started out with a real estate agent off MLS for my first 2 deals. Actually, those came from MLS. And then from there, I decided to, start getting a little bit more adventurous. Mm-hmm. And my third one was through a wholesaler, and it was a cash deal with a hard money loan. And so, and fourth one, similar. And then this recent one, I actually went straight to the seller. Mm-hmm. So along the way, there's a lot of, little things that happened as far as how I got to where I am. But now currently 5th property under contract, and my other four are all, I'm buy and hold. So they're all rentals.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually considering flipping my fifth one.
Mm-hmm.
So, so that's a little bit about me.
That's cool. And so are these properties, I don't know if you've said it or not, are they all single family or they're multifamily?
Yeah. So far I only have single family.
Mm-hmm.
I'm also right now negotiating with another off market property. It would be my first duplex, but I
Cool.
don't have a contract or anything yet, but I
Yeah.
would love to get into that, 2 to 4 unit space. I want to have a couple, I
Yeah.
think, small multis.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's cool. And so you've kind of dabbled in a bunch of different ways of funding these, right? You've done some seller financing on this last deal, sounds like, and hard money, some of your own cash. Uh, and I think that's a good point. I mean, people need to be kind of aware of what the options are, because man, if you can get a seller to finance the deal, then that's great. That's definitely help spread your capital a little bit further. So it's interesting that you have those different methods in mind. How are you finding these deals right now?
yeah, so like I mentioned, my first two were off MLS. I had my real estate agent that helped me buy my personal home.
Mm-hmm.
I just, was like, hey, I want to start buying properties. Can you help? And, tell them a little bit about what I was looking for and what areas. And so, yeah, those first two were off MLS. And the very first one, I went traditional lending, and I had to put 15% down
Mm-hmm.
to get into the deal. And I didn't even realize it at the time, but I didn't know what other people's money was.
Yeah.
And I used, my mother-in-law had a HELOC that we
Mm-hmm.
leveraged for the down payment
Mm-hmm.
to get into that first deal. And then my very first tenant, he actually, he paid for his first year of rent up
Oh,
front.
wow.
And when I tell people that story, they're like, that never happens. Well, that
Yeah.
was my first experience as a new landlord, where I
Yeah.
got, a check for almost 12 grand.
Wow.
So I was like, I don't want to just put this money in the bank. So I use that for the down payment on my second
Yeah.
property.
Love it.
And then for the third one, so the third one was through a wholesaler. I found it through my local real estate investing meetup.
Yeah.
And that one, I used hard money to fund it. And then I used the BRRRR strategy and did the cash out refi at the 6-month mark,
Yep.
paid off that. And then the fourth one, I'm actually closing out my cash out refi on that. It was also the BRRRR strategy for the fourth one.
I love that.
So,
I love the BRRRR strategy. That's been definitely my preferred method. And I love the story so far because it's obvious that you've really kind of done research, you've learned, and you're applying a lot of different tactics of where to find deals and how to fund them. It's pretty, I hope the listeners are getting a good sense of what's going on here. You are kind of, again, you're grabbing different ideas and different tactics and applying them, which is awesome. A lot of times you have a guest on and they're just like, well, I do this method and I find them here, but you're kind of a good mix of all the different things. You've definitely learned from others on how to make these deals happen. So that's awesome. And so what do you see going forward? What's the plan? How do you want to scale, and what's your destination, I guess?
So I'm kind of in a pivot, re-strategize year in my journey. And, some things have changed in my personal life. And so I'm just kind of exploring, learning new strategies. I know they tell you, they being everyone says, find a strategy, stick to it, stay away from shiny object. I'm actually kind of embracing shiny object right now, where I'm like, you know what? Like we talked about, I know there's more opportunities with seller financing and other creative financing. And so I think my strategy going forward is I'm going to start really going down that rabbit hole, and maybe hold off on the BRRRR strategy. I think I'll probably still sprinkle in some BRRRRs here and there, but right now I'm spending a lot of time and energy focused on honing in on my negotiation skills and finding ways to find more seller financed opportunities out there. And, really just seeing where that takes me. You mentioned you kind of, where do you want to scale from here? I'm also, most of the messages that I've heard, and when I was getting started, it could be really intimidating for me to hear, buy 50 houses this year and you need 20,000 in passive income every month. And that's just not me. I live pretty minimally. We can, kind of keep things a lot lower. And I want to keep my portfolio that way as well.
Yeah.
I always say, small but mighty is kind of my goal. And so I want to have around, probably 14, 15 total properties when it's all said and done. Have a couple of them completely paid off or paid down pretty low to where they're cash flowing good. And then that's really it. And then the rest, I just want to enjoy the creative side of seeing what's going on. And I really like networking and connecting with people, and just like we're doing right now, I like this part of the journey. So I want to keep doing more of this.
Yeah, that's so cool. I love the idea of, so a couple of things. I love the idea of keeping, your portfolio small but mighty. I think some people get carried away. I'm like, okay, I need X amount of doors. And if you're not careful and you don't build it correctly, you might get X amount of doors and leave your 9 to 5, but now you just got another job. So you have to be very careful how you structure that, and pay attention to what your true purpose or what your real why is. Otherwise you'll just end up with something that, just gobbles up your time and is not exactly what you want. So I think that's super crucial. And there was one other thing I was going to mention that is left my thought here. But so as you, when people talk to you, so the networking thing, I think that's pretty awesome how you did that. You got on Bigger Pockets, you started searching guests, and you looked for the people that were in your area. And then you started just connecting with them on Instagram, wherever, seeing if they were local, seeing if you find this meetup, which I'm actually intrigued. Maybe there's a virtual meetup going on out there. I'd love to jump in. I've been considering the market out there. So I'd be interested in jumping in on that. But so how do you tell, that's a great strategy. I've never really thought of that, but what are some tips or some ideas you can give to our listeners on the importance of networking in as far as getting started?
Yeah, well, I think, I'll give a shout out to my local meetup, and you're welcome to join it. It's called Bridge Real Estate Investing Meetup. And it's on Facebook. And, like I said, I found that through Bigger Pockets. I just searched Bigger Pockets, Kansas City. And, through that, I found 3 local investors that were doing great. And so for the Bridge meetup, the person that runs it, Nathan Brooks, he's been on the Bigger Pockets, like, I think 16 times or something crazy. But anyways, they, at the time they were doing in-person meetups. And of course, since COVID, it's all gone virtual. But the way that really helped me is, clearly when I got started, I had no background. So I didn't have anybody, I didn't have a contractor. I didn't have a lender. I didn't have any of the things that you need to have in place to be successful as an investor. And so through that meetup, I was able to meet literally every piece of the deal that I needed, included finding the deal, because there's a lot of wholesalers that post their deals within the Facebook group.
Yeah, right.
So I found the deal there. I found my contractor. I found my property manager, my hard money lender. Literally every piece to the puzzle was in there. And not only that, but just connecting with other seasoned investors, I was able to reach out to a few, and I got some coaching through one of my deals where I had a one-on-one consultation with one of them. And, they helped me walk away from a deal that I was getting ready to purchase. They're like, here's some red flags, So they helped me analyze my first couple of deals too. So yeah, I think the networking piece is huge. And one of the kind of philosophies that I always recommend to people is kind of the, like, have you read The Go Giver, that
I
book?
have been recommended that book a couple of times, but I have not read it yet.
Yes. So that's really kind of what I believe in. It's similar to the boomerang theory. Whatever
Mhm.
you put out there into the universe, it's going to come back your
Yeah.
way.
Yeah.
And so, I always just try to start with, if I see other people, especially like in the meetup or just in life in general, that need help with something, I like to help solve their problems or offer connections for them. And in exchange, it's not like I expect anything in return. It just happens that way.
Yeah.
And so that's a really strong piece of advice I can give, is when you're looking to help others and solve their problems, it's crazy how your problems will all of a sudden just start being solved too.
Yeah. No,
um,
I love that. That's a good point.
yeah.
And I think you've hit it on the head with the networking. Like, it's real estate, and maybe everything is, but real estate especially is a networking game. Like, it's really important that people know you, and it's really important that you know people, because that's where all your connections are. Like, that's where, like you said, you found everything you needed in that meetup, which is pretty sweet. Because sometimes it's not easy. I mean, and I don't, when I'm giving advice to like newbies or people that are trying to get into real estate, I sometimes forget the networking piece. I'll tell them what books to read. I'll tell them, go to Bigger
Mhm.
Pockets and search property management companies in your area, whatever. But I need to be better at saying, hey, okay, you're in what market? All right, perfect. Search, where are the local meetups? Where can you go to be around people that are already doing all this stuff? And then see what you can do to help, see what you can do to add value, and see who you can connect with. Because that is huge. And I ultimately think that's why I love the Instagram world. I mean, I know it can be a total
Mhm.
time suck, but I have just met so many people, and I can see so many people out there getting things done. And I've just been connected with a lot of people that have brought a ton of value and opportunity into my life. So that's huge. And it's so easy to do that in today's age. I mean, can you imagine, like,
Mhm.
whatever, like 80 years ago, trying to, well, how can I get a contractor? I want to invest. I'm in Utah and I want to invest in Ohio. How do I find a contractor out there?
Right.
It's like, that's impossible. And nowadays, like, okay,
No.
meetup.com, where's the meetup at? Okay, I'll find the guy on Instagram.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. And you DM them and you're there. Like, so much easier now. I couldn't
Yeah.
imagine having to do what we do now
Right.
without it. So that's just
we're
crazy.
definitely very we're very spoiled in today's world with our technology, and it can be as good as you make it. And that's, I actually, this month, I'm taking a pause from Instagram because I got to a point where it was starting to suck more of my time and energy, and I just needed a detox for a
Yeah.
little bit. And
Yep.
so I was like, I just need to take a few weeks away from it, and I'll be back, and I'll probably just allow some guidelines for myself so that I
Yeah.
don't get sucked in. But if you're using it the right way, like you said, I've, like, the seller financing, creative financing, all of that I learned about on Instagram through connecting with people.
Yeah.
With my last deal, I found via Facebook. I always post, we're buying houses, and on my Facebook, I have more of my local connections versus where Instagram is more of my national
Okay. Yeah.
friends. And
Hmm.
so Facebook is great for posting for friends and family. And that's how my last deal came to me directly, as a friend said, hey, I have a friend who's selling a house. And then they were like, do you want to go look at it? And I was like, I
Yeah.
sure do.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
yeah.
that's amazing. Yeah. I love that. And yeah, I mean, like, you mentioned seller financing. I had a guest on, I think his name is Larry Fierro. Can't remember what the name of his platform is, but I ought to introduce you to him. He has bought all of his small multifamily through owner financing. and he could definitely give you some pointers on that. You just meet people and you just learn the tactics and the different tricks. And then, he was a guest on my podcast. We met through Instagram. He was the guest on my podcast. I had a couple of questions about owner financing, and I can DM him and he'll answer them really quick. Like, there's no other way to get that kind of value and connection. And so definitely, especially if you're getting started, lean into the networking thing and the social media. Make sure that you are not just being a consumer of the social media, but you're actually providing value to others,
Yeah.
and then you're using it as a tool to meet people, because it can be a total time suck, definitely.
Yeah.
One other thing that you mentioned was chasing shiny objects, and we hear this all the time, right? The gurus out there are like, no, don't, pick your pick your method, stick to it, don't chase the other shiny objects out there. And I think that's really good advice when you're trying to get started, because that's when it can be a bigger problem. Like, you read a book like Brandon Turner's book, and it names all the different 7, 9, or 8, 9 ways how to invest in real estate. And then you're like trying to advance on all of them. That's a
Right.
problem, right? But I think
Yes.
as you go through, that's when it's important to just pick one way and then get a deal done that way. Get it 2 or
Yeah.
3 deals done that way, and then say, okay, hey, I like this about this, but maybe this is what I really am passionate about, and do a different deal a different way. I think once you've advanced and once you've got your first few deals out of the way, then you can start saying, okay, well, this is good, but I wonder, taking what I've learned here, can I try this and is it
Mhm.
more helpful in getting to my goal? So I think we always have to be aware of what shiny objects are out there. Like right now, apparently, short-term rental Airbnb is like the
Mhm.
thing right now. Like, people are making
Oh
so
yeah.
much. And so I'm learning about that, even though the burr method for me is kind of my bread and butter, but I want to be aware of what's out there. And then if I do need to make a pivot and shift, I can do that. But initially, yeah, that can be definitely an obstacle for new investors.
Right. Yeah, I agree 100%. Getting started, you have to be able to put the blinders on, but hone in on it. Don't get lost on what you're doing. But then, when you're at a point after you've been doing it for a few deals and you're like, okay, if something changes too, that's the other thing, like a year ago with COVID, it's like things changed. So there was so many people that were impacted in different ways. And so there's always going to be those times where you might have to stop and say, okay, this strategy worked for me from this point to this point. Now I need to reconsider what's going to get me to my next point. And, as time changes and you grow as an investor, I think it's important to consider, okay, I've grown. So now where do I go from here? So
Yeah, and I think, just as the normal real estate cycle happens, there's I think it's written by Jay Scott, the Recession Proof Investing, I think, is the name of the book.
yes. Mhm.
He talks very specifically about the cycle of real estate, or just
Mhm.
the economy in general, and what methods work better and are safer in certain portions of the cycle. And then also where the deals are, right? At the bottom of a recession, the deals are at a different place, easier to find. You're going to find more foreclosures, more things going for sale on the courthouse steps. But at the top of the market, it's way different. So you have to have the tools in your tool belt to be able to adjust as we go through a cycle, and different stages of that. So I think you do have to have a broad education and be
Yeah.
able to pivot when it's necessary.
Yes, I definitely like knowing a little bit about everything. And so that if the time comes, and then also back to, that go giver mentality that I mentioned, if I see someone else out there who is struggling for whatever reason, I know a little bit about something. I'm like, hey, why don't you check out this strategy
Yeah.
or read this book or whatever?
Yeah.
That's always come back to me 10 times over.
Yeah.
So,
That's exactly right. Yeah. I love that. And even like, I don't know, like Dave Ramsey was a big thing. I followed his process for quite a while in my early married life. And, that was awesome. There came a time where I was like, okay, I've kind of graduated from that because I don't want to do the growth stock mutual funds and retire at 65. I want to, semi-retire at 40 or whatever. And as a multi-millionaire, not just a millionaire. And so my path went a different way, but his principles are still very applicable, especially for people getting started in it. I just like you did. I'm like, yeah, okay, where are you at?
Yep.
Do you have an emergency fund? Okay, get one. Okay, now let's solve your debt problem. Let's get you out of debt. There's no reason to go invest in real estate if you have consumer debt. Get that out of the way. And so I love that background and the knowledge that I have because I can get people started on the right path and help them kind of get closer to wherever they're trying to get to, hopefully.
Yeah, I agree. I think Dave Ramsey, obviously with how my account started out, I have a lot of followers that were big Dave fans, and I call myself a Dave Ramsey dropout because I didn't follow all of his steps to a T. And, there's bits and pieces that I took that worked for me, like, paying off my, I haven't carried credit card back since my early 20s, thanks to Dave. And of course, the emergency fund. But yeah, like you said, it's like you lost me when you weren't talking about, leveraging debt and good debt. And, I know that's a hot topic and there's so many people that have different thoughts and opinions, but I'm in the school of as long as you're being smart about the debt that you take on, there's no reason you shouldn't be. So yeah. But yeah, and I agree. I think, personal finance, it's personal, same with everyone's investing journey. That's why, like at the beginning, I mentioned that a lot of the messaging I always seem to hear is grow big, have a bazillion doors and all of this money. And it's just like, again, everyone's journey is different. Yeah. Everyone has a different starting point. They're at different spots right now, and we're going towards different journeys. So yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, when I first got started, I would listen to like the Bigger Pockets podcast and I would try and say, okay, well, how do I follow that path or how do I do that? But ultimately, like you said, everybody's starting at a different point. Everybody has different resources or access to different resources and network. And no two desired destinations by any two people are the same. And so don't get so stuck in like absolutely mirroring somebody's path because it might take you to a place that you don't want to go. And so I think you take the principles and the education from it, but ultimately you're on your own path. And if that's a small but mighty portfolio, perfect. If you want to be a Grant Cardone with $2 billion of real estate, okay, that's fine too. It just depends on what your ultimate destination is and what you want, and what kind of a journey you want to lead. So I think it's all very, very profound stuff. I love that.
Yes. And we might talk in 5 years and I might be like, I own 3,000 doors, things could change between now and then. But for now, I'm happy with the path I'm on. And it really, it's funny, but I really have to focus on scaling small. It's hard, but I have to focus in on that and making sure that I'm focused on quality over quantity, because I could go out and I could definitely scale up right now if I wanted. In my market and with what I'm seeing coming through right now, is that the right thing? Probably not. So yeah.
Well, send me the deals that you turned down and maybe I'll grab them. I don't know. I need to get into a couple other markets. This has been so awesome so far. I love it. What are some common, so as you talk to other investors that are getting started, or even investors that they're along their journey a little ways, what are some common mindset characteristics that you see in them that are limiting, that kind of slow them down, or that you see impede people?
Oh my goodness. So if you look on my Instagram, I mean, the majority of my posts are mindset, motivational type posts. And really, I mean, I think back to the way I thought about real estate investing and wealth in general. I thought rich people were, they got that money from family.
Mhm.
They, once you're in, you're in. And someone like myself who came from, a lower economic status, and, no one in my family had ever gone to college. And so I was the first to kind of break that barrier. You just really, you start kind of seeing yourself as, okay, this is the way things have been. This is the way they're going to be. And it only takes one person to think differently, and say, hey, one person, that's all it takes to
Yeah.
change the whole family tree. So I think that's a lot of limiting that I see. And then the other one, I mean, a lot of it's just confidence, just believing in yourself. And I mean, I'll tell you, especially I think for women, I've noticed, I've read a lot of books about how women are taught to be perfect from
Yeah.
the second we're born. It just, everything has to be perfect. And I've really spent several years deprogramming from
Yeah.
all of the years of social conditioning I went through, thinking I'm not going to go for it unless I can make sure that it's going to be perfect. And so
Yeah.
I'm actually working with my own daughter who's, I'm like, hey, I'd rather you take a risk and fall flat on your face and then learn from it and go from there.
Yeah.
So that's another big thing, is just believing in yourself enough to go out and say, I'm ready to, what's the saying, to suck at something new.
I love
There's
that.
something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, and not like, you have to really just be vulnerable to open up and be like, hey, I screwed that up. But in the process, I learned X, Y, and Z,
Yeah.
and I got hands-on experience, and that is priceless.
Yeah.
So I think those are probably some of the biggest limiting beliefs that,
Yeah.
I've seen.
No, that's huge. And that's often, I think the root of it is that we just have these messed up expectations, and that can be programmed into us from maybe not parents, but more just society in general, and how we perceive society and how we perceive we just think that, I mean, even without Instagram, I know Instagram is very easy just to think everybody's perfect and everybody's got an incredible life. And I know that's so cliche now, but
Right.
even not even that, like we can just, you bump into an old friend from college or high school, and how's things going? They're like, oh yeah, this and that. And you just think that everything's perfect. And so you feel like your life needs to be perfect too. And I think we set these just unhealthy and unrealistic expectations. And that's ultimately what causes the belief, or the an inability to believe in ourselves and that we're good enough and all this stuff. And it's just very
Right.
damaging. So checking our expectations, being forgiving of like, yeah, this is like, it's so funny. Like when when a new child is trying to walk, we don't consider them falling over the first few times like a failure. Like, no way. Like, we're just like, oh yeah,
Right.
get back up and do it again like that. And but then when we get older, we're like, hey, we're not allowed to tip over. Like, we're just not
Right.
allowed to anymore, because these expectations of perfection, and like, we're just not allowed to make mistakes anymore. And that can be so damaging. And so we have to pull back and check our perspective, and like, why am I feeling this way? What expectation am I, what perceived, expectation am I not hitting that's
Right.
causing me to have this issue or this heartache? And then, okay, is that expectation healthy, or is it realistic? Is it the right one? Like, how can I reset that? I mean,
Mhm.
that I think people that are the healthiest mentally are just more self-aware of why they're feeling certain ways, and able to dive into their mind of like, why am I feeling that way, and what can I do to change it? That mindfulness is super big for people.
Oh yeah. And I definitely, when I am on the gram, one of the things that I do use it for in the mornings is I have there's probably about 24 of us that do a morning routine,
Mm.
and we post about it. And that's been huge for me. And my, because I have where I'm like, unless it's going to be something of those feelings, and I'm sure I always will. I think I usually spend a good 10 to 15 minutes doing some sort of a meditation, and then I'll spend a good 20, 30 minutes doing some sort of either yoga or walking or running if it's not 10 degrees outside.
Yeah.
And then a little bit of reading, and journaling's been huge for me too, and I can use that as an outlet to write out if I am doubting myself. I can kind of just write through it and figure
Yeah.
out like what's causing that, why are you feeling this way. And yeah, I think it's important to, instead of like the old way was like take feelings and just like bury them down and put on this
Yeah.
everything's perfect. And
Yeah.
now it's like, no, let's talk about it, and I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm excited. I think more people are open now to just things are different with mindset, and
Yeah.
people are more open to it now.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I'm definitely a believer in the journaling aspect. Like I recently reread The Miracle Morning, and a part of that obviously is journaling or whatever, writing, writing, I guess it's scribing is what he calls it, but basically means journaling, writing things down. And that's been huge. Like just over the past I started that January 1st, The Miracle Morning. So I've been going just over a month now, and that the writing things down, sometimes it's only a paragraph, but sometimes it's like a page. And it's actually been really helpful. I've learned a lot of things just by digesting and computing my feelings, and then just analyzing it. Like it's actually been super
yeah,
helpful. And I know all of our listeners that haven't that aren't journaling, they've heard people say that before, and like we mean it. Like it is super
right.
helpful. It's just like when you talk to somebody, whatever, like a campfire talk where you're talking about, deep things. It's super helpful. And now you're just doing it with yourself basically, and just computing
Mhm.
and digesting what's going on. And it can be super, super helpful to get you more aware and mindful of what's going on in your life. I definitely recommend it for sure. And one thing that kept me from doing it was I'm like, okay, if I'm going to journal, I want to like write down everything. And so you have to let go of that. You got to be able to say, no, I'm just going to write down something, like just a little bit. Because I always like, hey, well, I got up at 8 o'clock and I did this and I did this. Like, that's not what it's for. So yeah, you have to let go of that a little bit, but that's definitely a good tactic, a good skill to have.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, some mornings there's one sentence. Sometimes I start to write and then I'm like, never mind. Today I'm just not on it. And then other days it's like, crap, grab another piece of paper. I've got
Yeah.
a lot. And
Yeah.
then I also at night, right before I go to sleep, I keep a gratitude journal. And
Yeah.
so some days it's just one or two sentences about something from that day that, brought joy or I'm grateful for, so that I can have that before I go to bed. Cause sometimes I have trouble shutting off.
Yeah.
So that can help kind of clear my mind right before bed. So it's like I do the morning and the nighttime, and
Yeah.
it takes 2 minutes,
Yeah.
and made huge improvements in my overall mood and energy and mindset. So
Love
definitely
that.
recommend it.
Yeah. Yeah. Morning routine is extra successful if it's coupled with an evening routine, I think.
Yep.
So yeah, that's a good point. So we've talked a little bit about kind of the limiting beliefs or some of the obstacles for people, and this has been great. What are some common characteristics you see in the people that are succeeding out there, that you see just really getting things done? What are some common patterns you see in them?
Well, and I think what we just talked about, people that aren't scared to go out and try something new and make mistakes and learn from it. People that are open to networking and, a lot of times when I think networking, I think of like, the tables where you have to like go to a networking event and get a drink, and like most people are standing in the corner scared. Like you don't have to do traditional networking now. There's so many other ways if you're not comfortable in those situations where you can message someone, you can, just comment on an Instagram or a Facebook post and comment on someone else's comments. There's so many other ways to do it to make it more intimate, to where it's not a big to do.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I think those are important. Mindset is probably the biggest and most important out of anything. You have to believe in yourself and know that no matter what happens, you're going to come out on the other side okay. Even if you do fall down, you'll find a way to get back up. And so, yeah, I think just having those couple of things is going to be important to be successful. And all of the other things, like I think I told you on my third deal, I used a wholesaler and hard money loan.
Yep.
I always use if you find a good deal. So I think people that are successful are able to find good deals too. Everything else will come. It's like, if you manifest a good deal into your life, then just watch how everything else starts coming into your life too.
Yeah.
So on my third deal, I was like, I'm going to buy this property. I'm a cash buyer. I didn't even know exactly what that meant at the time. But as soon as he was like, all right, you're buying this house, then I was like, oh, okay, now I really have to figure out what a cash buyer means, because I've seen all of these people saying that they are. And I figured it out immediately. I was able to come to the closing table, so.
Yeah. No, I love that. Yeah, I love that. What is one of your favorite or most, what's a book that's been most impactful in your life?
I mean, this one is not necessarily real estate related, but it's Your Money or Your Life.
Mm-hmm.
That is a really good one that I always tell people, when you stop and just think about the way things have been for society or in your own life, and just start questioning things. That's kind of where it started with me. Is I just started thinking there's got to be other ways to do things than the traditional, go to school, work 40 something years at a desk, retire, maybe live for 10 years. Like there's got to be other things out there. And Your Money or Your Life, really, it just starts asking questions about your life energy and what you're trading your time for. And it's a really interesting book. So I highly recommend that.
And who is the author on that?
Vicki Robin, I think is the author's name.
I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds right. So that was one. And then I don't know the Go Givers author's name either. I should have been more prepared.
No, I'll look it up and make sure it's in the notes. That's good. Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah, those have been good.
And what is your why? I mean, we've just talked about it a little bit, but if you wanted to give it a good summary, like what's motivating you now? What gets you out of bed now?
I mean, I can't give you one why. I have a few. Mm-hmm. But a lot of it for me, especially being a woman, it's one of those things where I run the finances in my household. Not many women do that. And I think just speaking up about it and getting other women excited about taking more of a lead role in finances in general, and also in investing and getting into real estate, and being able to help show future generations, like my daughter, I mentioned that you can do whatever you want.
Yeah.
That's important. So that's huge. And then, another of my whys is just, I've had health issues all my life. And so I think it's one of those things where, like, when you know that, yeah, and I mean, I guess this could happen to anyone, even without health issues, that, tomorrow could be your last day.
Yeah.
So it's like, you really have to, I know it's kind of morbid, so I don't want to go down that rabbit hole, but just knowing and being faced with your own mortality, and just thinking about, like, would you do all of this if,
Yeah.
if you knew that you only had 5 or 10 years left, for example? What would you do different? And so those are big parts of my why.
I love that.
And really, I just like educating and motivating and watching other people go out and, like, do whatever is going to be their best life. So
No, I think, and you're right. I mean, it's not morbid. It's something that we all have to think about, because I mean, we have limited time on this in this life, and we have to think about how we want to allocate it and how we want to get the most out of it, right? Like, my goal is to, it's a dichotomy, but my goal is to slow down and enjoy the moment, but also jam as many moments into my life as I can. You know what I mean? Like I want to appreciate all the little moments and slow down enough to, enjoy putting together a Lego tractor with my son. But I also want to jam as many of those kinds of moments in. So I'm also frantically trying to, get financial freedom, so I have more time and all this stuff. And so it's like this weird, it almost pulls me apart sometimes, but it's this weird dichotomy. But I just feel like we have just one life, and we need to live. I think there's a country song by Tim McGraw, "Live Like You Were Dying." Like, if we're always just thinking thinking that, but not in a scared of death kind of way, but just in a, hey, I know that I have a limited amount of time, and I want to get the most out of it as I can. And especially if you're a person of faith, and you believe in the next life and that there's a purpose to this life, getting the most out of this life is huge. And so I think that's a great mindset to have. Love that. What are some ways that you're giving back currently, and maybe some big things you want to do in the future?
So, I mean, I do a lot right now. So for about a decade, I have been with my local Habitat for Humanity. So I do a lot on the family selection committee. And so I get to go out and interview families for potential habitat homes and help select which family gets the house. So that's something that I do. And then I'm also a big sister for Big Brothers Big Sisters. So that's a really good program as well. And then I have some other stuff in the works as well that involves, giving back and getting more involved within my local real estate community. But I'm still working through all the details. But I'm always looking for ways to do more. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because that was another why, is a legacy. I want to leave a legacy behind. And like I mentioned earlier, I am that one person kind of changing my family tree. And so I want to make sure that I'm leaving a legacy, not just wealth, but also just, I want my kids one day to be like, hey, great grandma Mindy did X, Y, and Z, like that stuff really drives me. So
that's awesome. Yeah, I agree with that. If we can, if anybody that's striving for financial, for wealth, there should be some aspect of, okay, well, once I get there, or even along the way, what am I going to do to make the world a better place? And ultimately, as you get more wealth, you can often get, if you do it right, you should get more freedom, or more freedom to choose how you allocate your time. And then that's when it can be very easy, or easier, to say, all right, now, like, what do I do to help others? What do I do to help the world? And if everybody had that mindset, man, we'd live in a great world. Unfortunately, not everybody has that mindset, but if if we can get there, man, it would be, I mean, it'd be way better. Like, I know the government takes care of a lot of people and does a great job with those kinds of things, but man, if it was something that just the general public did, it'd be way more efficient. All right. It'd be way more effective. And we would grow as a population, as a race, as a species. Man, it would be awesome. So I always like to ask the why, what ways you're giving back, because I think it's good to just circle back around of, what we're all ultimately looking to do. And it's just good to hear. It's just cool to hear the ideas of what others are doing. It's super motivating. So I appreciate you sharing that with us.
Yeah, definitely.
So how can people, if people want to learn more about you and follow you, where should we send them?
So I'm always, well, besides this month, but I don't know when you'll air this, so I might be back. But on Instagram, you can find me at Investing in Your Wealth. And I also have a website, investinginyourwealth.com. That's
Perfect.
Pretty much it.
And if they want to jump in on the meetup, it was Bridge Real Estate Investing, right? Meetup.
Yes.
Perfect.
Bridge Real Estate Investing Meetup. It's on Facebook. Highly recommend joining the group.
Love that. Well, Mindy, it's been awesome. I think it's been a phenomenal conversation. I have thoroughly enjoyed it. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Yes, I enjoyed being on. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Money Maven Project podcast. A true Maven shares knowledge with others, so be sure to share this podcast and leave a review. Thanks so much, and until next time, live life with intention.